Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, chapter 932 of One Piece is out, so if you haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. I'm like simultaneously relieved and disappointed that the chapter didn't get back to Big Mom at all. Because you guys know that that is what I am really excited for at the moment. This is par for the course, so Oda gives us something hype and then it will take a couple chapters before we get back to it. I am so curious as to what happens with Big Mom. But at the same time, I have so many videos that I want to make, and pretty much any time that we get new information, we'll make something irrelevant. But then again, the inner JB comes out and he just tells me, JB, you want to know what happens next. But I don't want that to take away at all from what we actually got in this chapter, which I thought was really interesting and honestly mostly unexpected in terms of the sequence of events themselves. Some of the reveals, on the other hand, were less surprising. But yeah, where I was sitting as far as the previous chapters about the Robin plotline, how she would handle the ninja, and Komurasaki and the Shogun, I wasn't sure how hyped I should be. Honest to goodness, guys, I think in this situation I had zero expectations whatsoever. And yeah, I was very, very pleasantly surprised when all of this really brought the stakes of the scene through the roof compared to anything that I even envisioned. And even talking about the stakes themselves, it wasn't so linear as, you know, the ninja captured Robin or someone outright immediately saved her. But yeah, there are several things from this chapter that I found to be really, really interesting, and an overall discussion that I want to get into at the end of the review that I haven't really seen anybody talk about, but is really my greatest takeaway from the chapter. At the very least in terms of speculation. So I'm sure you guys already know, but JB's first reaction will quickly become JB's first theory deriving from the chapter. But yeah, let's just start off and let's talk about the ninja. The Orochi Oni Wabanshu. As a side note, guys, I could not say this word off the top of my head for the life of me. There are way too many syllables, so if anybody has any suggestions for how we can shorten this to make this more JB friendly, please do. For now, I'm going to call them Orochi's ninjas. From the last chapter and this chapter, we could see that they discovered Robin snooping around, they were suspicious of her, they surrounded her, and they quickly deduced that she was not telling the truth and went to go kill her. Obviously, they failed because Robin used her head in this chapter, which was absolutely fantastic moment. Again, a side note, a lot of people complain about Robin or many of the strats not really getting the light shined on them like people hoped that they would. But this, honestly guys, I think that this is going to continue to be a problem as the further that we go in the story. Oda does what I think is his very best in order to give each Straw Hat a moment whenever he can, but there are just far too many characters for him to do this very often enough to satisfy us. In the past, maybe in like Enies Lobby or Thriller Bark, we could see the story really focus in on every single one of the Straw Hats, but now with each arc and after the time skip, it's just like, it's not just the Straw Hats, it's the Straw Hats Grand Fleet, all of the major characters at all of these islands, which are really powerful because you're on that side of the Grand Line, plus the enemy's crews, which are also enormous. It's tough. Honestly, guys, it just seems like after the time skip, specifically the Dressrosa arc, later Whole Cake Island, Wano, probably Future and Elbaf, and later, every arc is more of like Marineford and Scope, and a lot of people were not happy with how Marineford handled the amount of characters that were there. Because unless arc ends up getting quadrupled in length, Oda's hands are kind of tied. And I think that that's just an inherent problem of One Piece with the cast of characters that Oda is dealing with, especially after the time skip. There's just way too many of them. But I don't mean this to sound negative at all, because I like the scope and I think that this is the natural direction of the story. The only way that Oda can really do it often and for it to make sense within the rules of the world. But there obviously comes a sacrifice with that. But anyway, back to Orochi's ninjas. Yes, they failed to kill Robin, but again, they quickly figured out that she was somewhere nearby and went to go track her down. I am extremely hyped for them, probably a little bit more so than a lot of people that I'm seeing, just based on their designs and what Oda has given us so far about their level of competency. I don't think that there's any way that they could have known that, first of all, they don't know that this person is Robin, they don't know the capabilities of her Devil Fruit, so this was just a mistake that I see happening to almost anybody. And in no way takes away from their hype. But I would say that right now, what I'm lacking more than anything else to really sell me on them fully is some sort of hint at what role they're going to play in the story and why they are important. I mean, I think I've said this on a lot of occasions in the past, but I'm not big on One Piece fights as compared to a lot of people. I like the plot more so than the fights. That's just my experience reading One Piece. And I don't expect everybody to share this with me. So of the fights that we get, the ones that are most significant to me are the most significant fights in the story, specifically Luffy versus any major antagonist, or that I feel as though our heroes are at some kind of disadvantage or have some sort of hurdle to overcome. So if we're talking about random and or brief conflicts that are not central to the story, I'm just sort of like mid-tier on those. And so when it comes to Orochi's ninjas, they're almost like labeled as a group. To me, in my mind, they are a power in their entirety, and only maybe like one individual or two individuals out of those really stand out at this point in time. So it's hard to figure them as having a significant fight with anybody that I really care about. But obviously, we still have a lot of story to tell, and many things could change from now into the future. Realistically, how many strong fighters are actually loyal to the Shogun? Like really loyal? If he was put into a corner, would they fight for him? And I mean, maybe it's just the ninja at this point in time. So maybe that implies that in order to defeat the Shogun, these are sort of the last hurdle you have to overcome, ignoring Kaido and his crew entirely. This could be the case. And even looking at the number specifically, there are 11 of them. It's close enough to the number of Strats. Plus there's 2 women, and there's 2 women in the Strat crew. Maybe these are all 1v1 fights. I don't know how to rationalize it. The Wano arc is so huge, but again, it seems possible, and I hope that this is the case. But I told you guys that I was hyped for them, and the main reason is because of plot. Just as a group of ninja, I feel as though Oda has a lot of opportunity to have them do really cool things that could end up being vital to the story in various ways. They could show up where you least expect them, be able to acquire information that you do not want them to have, be able to lay traps that put our heroes in situations that they wouldn't have been otherwise. I mean, honestly, what they have already done is very similar to what I am excited for them to continue doing. Like, for instance, Robin snooping around, something that I would normally expect her to be able to get away with. No, she can't, because the ninja are watching her and perceptive of her movements. But yeah, as for now, I'm just sort of waiting to be thrown a bone to fully, I guess, create a headcanon about what their role will be in Wano. But I would say that for now, I am hesitant to go all in on my excitement or expectation for them in the story, because I mean, honestly, it could just turn out that these people are like a major antagonist for somebody like Raizo. And I'm just gonna be honest with you guys, I'm not all that hyped to see, Raizo's defining moment in Wano. I just don't care that much about Raizo. Oda would have to do a lot of work to get me there. And as we sort of stated earlier, there's so many characters that are going to be in Wano, it seems hard to rationalize every single one of them really getting the attention that they deserve. But before we move on from the ninja and their interactions with Robin, I felt as though a comment that they made as Robin was sort of running away was really interesting. They were very confused about her powers. They weren't absolutely certain where they came from. They wondered if she was a ninja or had some sort of demonic powers, but they specifically thought to themselves, maybe she's just a ghost. And so guys, this is significant to me because the Shogun is expecting ghosts to appear. And Kyoshiro in the past commented that he is fearful of the return of the Kozuki. And this was further emphasized in this chapter itself because he is aware that Kinemon has returned supposedly from the dead, although most don't believe him. So there are some supernatural vibes going on here. Now guys, obviously they are not dead, they are not ghosts, but if Kinemon were to appear somewhere, it's clear that the Shogun and anybody else would assume that they would be. And the story to me seems to be clearly implying that we're going to go in that direction. Obviously, they're going to show up, and the Shogun's going to think, oh my gosh, dead people have finally come 20 years later to try and take me down. And again, beyond the Shogun, everybody else in Wano is going to assume the supernatural. So this is obviously going to be relevant in the future, but it could be relevant as soon as the next time that we get to this plotline. I think that it's fair to wonder right now exactly how Robin is going to escape. As we saw later on in the chapter, she sort of blended in with the crowd, all the things went down, and then Robin takes off running. So on one hand, it seems pretty well telegraphed that Oda intends for Nami and Shinobu to do something in order to rescue Robin because they are her guards. So it seems possible to me that in all the chaos that is about to ensue, Robin disappears from sight and then actually disappears, period, because of Shinobu's abilities. Or even Nami's Mirage Tempo, furthering the lore that she may be a ghost. And on the other hand, you have conveniently sitting within a wall, the skeleton Brook. I'm telling you guys, if Brook appears anywhere, people are going to lose their minds because they're gonna 100% assume that he is some sort of reincarnated ghost of the Kozuki. I honestly don't know how Oda could avoid that joke. But yeah, time will tell here. I just think that if Brook is within the wall, he's gonna make an appearance. Otherwise, Oda wouldn't have put him there. And unlike Shinobu and Nami, his abilities are not blatantly obvious for getting Robin out of this predicament without just straight up having to fight everybody. So my current headcanon is that Brook makes an appearance long enough to be seen and then is essentially saved by Nami and Shinobu as Robin and Brook basically disappear right before everybody's eyes. But yeah, let's talk about the next thing. Let's talk about Komurasaki. I'd like to talk about this all in order, but you guys read the chapter, so you know the sequence of events. Essentially, Komurasaki, since before this chapter was sort of, Oda tried to very lamely sell her as like an evil, vindictive woman, and we all kind of assumed that no matter what bad things she had been doing, she was doing them for a good reason. She was a good person at heart, and this chapter really seemed to emphasize that. It was not very surprising. But yeah, sort of everyone was inwardly, perhaps even outwardly, mocking the Shogun, but trying not to be obvious about it or catch the Shogun's attention. Poor old Toko. As a side note, guys, she's always laughing, and I wasn't sure how that would fit into the story, but this was just, it was well done. Very well done, Oda. She can't help it, she starts laughing, the Shogun goes to kill her, and then we get to see the real Komurasaki. Or at least what we assume to be the real Komurasaki, unless she just has a soft spot in her heart for this girl in particular and hates literally everybody else. But yeah, she intervenes, even possibly incurring the wrath of the Shogun and its entire entourage in order to defend her. I see a lot of people holding out hope that Komurasaki has a bit more layers to her character, and as opposed to most of the female characters that we've gotten over the course of the story. I'm not really sure where I stand, but my expectations are really low. I just tend to believe that Komurasaki is probably just genuinely good all the way to the core, but time will tell. But I think the most interesting thing out of all of this is she smacked the Shogun, and oh my goodness, she is strong. Well, strong, I guess, for what it is that I thought that she could do. I mean, it's hard to really put this into perspective, her power scale. But my general impression was that Komurasaki wasn't even trying. Like, she held her hand out to, like, tap the Shogun, and he got smacked. That honestly caught me by surprise. And I guess now Komurasaki's in a place where she may not be able to return from. I don't see the Shogun forgiving her for, essentially insulting him in front of everybody. I mean, something's got to happen, so Komurasaki's got to get out of here, the same as with Robin and Toko. And there's really only two things that make sense to me, both of which could happen at the same time. On one hand, it seems implied at the end of the chapter that Kyoshiro is going to do something to cause chaos in order to possibly allow her to escape. He also sort of gave the impression in this chapter of being fond of Komurasaki, having, quote, raised her being from his area, him treating his subordinates as though they are family. He also doesn't appear to respect the Shogun all that much, so that seems to be going somewhere. And on the other hand, Komurasaki may escape with Robin and Toko. I think this especially makes sense because Komurasaki has an interest in protecting Toko and doesn't know anything about Robin. So this seems perfectly orchestrated to get Komurasaki to meet with the Straw Hats, meet with the Pirate Samurai Mink Alliance, and then join forces and become an ally. And this of course leads into the other hot topic when you're talking about Komurasaki. Guys, it just seems stupidly obvious that she is Hiyori. Guys, Komurasaki has essentially had 2 chapters in Wano, really emphasized her, and in those 2 chapters, Oda fit in as much foreshadowing and as many hints as he possibly could that she is Hiyori. First you have her introduction into the story, and then afterwards Momonosuke is talking, and he's like, oh yeah, my sister would be around like 22 years old right now. It's like, okay, come on, like, Oda, you're being way too obvious. And then in this chapter, Komurasaki says that she is the daughter of a samurai, and whenever everybody was talking about Momonosuke his whereabouts not being known, of course you have the ominous ... of Komurasaki thinking about that and it of being some relevance to her. Oda didn't even beat around the bush with it. He didn't put her in the background with the ... No, she got a straight up face panel with it. Oda wants you to know that there is a connection between Momonosuke and herself. And even reading between the lines, she said she will not bow down to anybody, which seems like a very relevant characteristic for somebody who is possibly the princess of Wano. So yeah, I'm telling you guys, it could not be any more obvious that Komurasaki is Hiyori, and it is for that reason that I am skeptical of it. I'm just telling you guys, Oda is 99%, maybe even 100% of the time more subtle than this. There's no doubt in my mind that he absolutely wants us to believe that Komurasaki is Hiyori. The only thing that he hasn't done is officially confirmed it at this point. So I'm just I'm very skeptical. I'm just gonna put it like that, guys. I'm skeptical. It could be that she is Hiyori and there's more layers that we need to know. There's like complexity to it. But yeah, guys, my ears are perked and my eyes are peeled. But until then, I think that the obvious assumption is that after Momonosuke and everybody got sent into the past, Komurasaki stayed, or Hiyori, stayed in Wano and was raised by one of the samurai, the Hat Samurai. The Hat Samurai was for some reason captured or caught or disappeared, leaving Komurasaki on her own, possibly without the knowledge herself that she is Hiyori. But if I'm going to offer an alternative speculation just to speculate something different because this is really, really obvious, then it's possible maybe that she is Kinemon's daughter. And if she is over 20 years old, for some reason this information was kept hidden from Kinemon himself. And then obviously after that point in time, he disappeared. And I'll be honest with you guys, if this were to be true, imagining the thought of Kinemon finding out that he had a daughter, that seems like a worthwhile moment. And despite all the hoops that you have to jump through in order to even speculate this in the first place, again, her being Hiyori is what is obvious. It is kind of perfect because Kinemon is absolutely against women probably being of this station that Komurasaki is in. I'd hazard a guess. But yeah, guys, the last thing that I want to talk about today is I want to talk about the Shogun and a couple different things, and really my biggest takeaway from this chapter. And so for the longest time, we believed that the Shogun would be some sort of joke character, a meme, you know, he comes off as bigger than he is, and for the most part that is true. But as far as his devil fruit ability goes, or if it's whatever kind of power it is, it could be smile, I like it a lot. I think it looks really cool. And you know, when you read One Piece, initial expectations are not always what Oda ends up giving you. He loves to be deceptive, and I kind of think that this is the case for the Shogun. Now, hear me out, guys. He is coming off as a joke, but at the same time, in various ways, he seems very competent. And I think that his powers and the way that they appeared in this chapter gave the same sort of vibe as not as much of a joke as maybe we initially thought. Now, of course, we haven't power scaled his abilities. He may not be the strongest samurai, but still probably formidable. But here's the thing, guys, and this is what has me most interested. In many of the ways that he was actually competent, the people around him view these same things as inept. So the example from this chapter is the fact that the Shogun expects the ghost of Odin and the ghost of the Kozuki to return in this date, and he specifically has intel that suggests that Kinemon is actually, like, in Wano. And this is all true. Kinemon is actually here. They are actually preparing a fight against him, and he absolutely should be cautious. These are all good moves. And so he brings it up to the group at large. And what do? They snicker at him. Now they try not to make that obvious because he does have Kaido backing him, but in their minds, they view the Shogun as a coward and as a scrub, even when they shouldn't. So earlier in the arc when we saw Kyoshiro say these very same things, he's not alone. It was nearly everybody who is important in Wano who believes this. I speculated this sometime earlier in the arc, but I'm gonna double down on this, guys. I think that the Shogun has enemies other than the samurai, the Straw Hats, and their alliance. And I don't think that these other enemies that the Shogun has would necessarily ally themselves with Kinemon and company. I don't think that these people are supporters of the old regime and supporters of the Kozuki. I think that they might be interested in becoming the Shogun themselves. And so I want to talk about Kyoshiro, right? So right now, Kyoshiro sits at a point in which it's like ambiguous. Is he a good person? Is he going to be an ally? Or is he not? I have a feeling Kyoshiro has me so curious as to whether or not he will be the final samurai boss of Wano. Let's get this straight first. As far as we are aware, outside of Kaido's forces and the Shogun and his ninja, Kyoshiro seems to be the most powerful individual. And very similar to the Shogun, it seems as though he's cultivated ties between himself directly to Kaido. So as we got to see at the end of this chapter, Kyoshiro is about to act. He is about to do something. And it was almost outright stated in this chapter that he would go to absurd lengths in order to protect those that he considers part of his group, and that would include Komurasaki. It was said that he, quote, raised her. It seems almost likely that Kyoshiro will fight for her, which would mean fighting against the Shogun. And even besides this, I just wonder how Komurasaki gets out of the predicament that she's in. Robin is running away. The Strats have no obvious reason to go intervene in order to go save her unless Toko says something. I think that Komurasaki might need an ally such as Kyoshiro to just simply escape. So on one hand, this might make Kyoshiro look really good. Maybe he eventually joins Kinemon's and the rest forces. But I just want to say this, guys. If the Shogun loses Kyoshiro, who seems to be the most powerful individual in Wano aside from the Shogun as far as people that are, have been living in the country the past 20 years, can the Shogun afford to lose Kyoshiro? Does that make the fight unbalanced? Here's the thing, it seems as though the Shogun's greatest ally is Kaido, and aside from that, maybe his ninja. Outside of that, as far as the people of Wano, they, I think, would choose to side with Kyoshiro above the Shogun. I believe that that was made abundantly clear in this chapter. And as far as the ninja are concerned, it's possible that their allegiance is simply to the Shogun, not necessarily the current Shogun. And the problem with relying on Kaido right now for the Shogun is Big Mom. Kaido's hands might very well be tied, if he even cares all that much in the first place, because it seems as though they're partial to Kyoshiro. And again, pure honesty, I don't think that Kyoshiro fears the Shogun quite like everybody else does. I really do wonder, guys, whether or not Kyoshiro already has a plot or a play in the works to replace Orochi. Frankly, Orochi is not needed. The only reason why I feel as though that this might not happen is because of Orochi's history with the Kozuki, and specifically being responsible along with Kaido of killing Oden. So there seems like there needs to be some redemption there, but even think about it. Think about that moment, guys, of defeating Orochi. It's just anticlimactic compared to possibly Kyoshiro, who just seems so much better. So I really could see Kyoshiro taking advantage of the chaos of the moment, Kaido being distracted, and everybody really supporting him to begin with in order to replace him. And again, guys, the biggest thing for me is Big Mom's presence. Big Mom will easily be able to distract Kaido from anything that's going on in the capital. And so if Kyoshiro ends up switching teams to the Straw Hats, I just don't know if that fight is balanced enough. But regardless of all this, I find it to be significant that Oda is specifically giving us the impression that the higher-ups of Wano don't respect the Shogun, even when he might be competent. For now, there just does not seem to be a whole lot of win here for Orochi. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much what I had to say today. Overall, I thought that this was a fantastic setup chapter. But as always, if you notice something, let me know in the comment section below. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.